and welcome back to another show. Today, Fernando and I will be talking to a man by the name of Ray Doherty. Ray is a well-respected Yowie researcher, which is basically like a Bigfoot for anybody else in the world. And we will be chatting about his experiences and some of his discoveries, and having a bit of a candid chat about what it takes to be a Yowie researcher, what you need if you want to get into it yourself. So for anybody who is just looking at getting into cryptozoology research, be it any kind of cryptozoological creature, this will be a good one to watch and learn about what you need to take into consideration and the kind of investigation that you want to do before you start getting the gear for it, because as you will find out in this interview, depending on the kind of investigation you want to do will definitely dictate the kind of equipment you need to look at. So it could save you a lot of money by not buying the wrong gear for the kind of investigation that you want to do. So we'll jump straight across now and we will bring in Ray. So we have Ray with us. As we said in the introduction, he is a Yowie researcher. For you people in North America, that is Bigfoot. How are you, Ray?
Yeah, good, thank you, guys. How are you doing?
We're good.
Good.
And obviously we have Fernando up there from New York. Ray, we want to get into your story. So I do believe it started out with you researching or going out looking for UFOs.
Well, that's right. The first encounter with what we believe to be a Yowie was in 1994. We would have this spot in southwestern, what we call southeast Queensland here, or the southwest direction from the city, of a couple of hours from the city. And we were out there behind Amberley Air Force Base, and that area had a sightings, a lot of really strange light sightings and sightings of UFOs and other anomalous events. So we used to go out there a lot and investigate. And this one particular night, we've got the telescope set up, we've got our high-powered halogen spotties and spotlights. We had other, little bits and pieces of equipment that we would use for 1994, which was fairly limited compared to today. We didn't have, things like your ultraviolet and UV, ultraviolet cameras and your infrareds or your FLIRs like you do today. So we, had the old. The old whole cassette video cameras and
I remember them.
things like that in '94. And anyway, we're hanging around and we're just looking, and it's a beautiful spot, but it's one side of this particular road is farmland, and the other side is pastoral land surrounded by very dense bush before a mountain range. And the mountain, we always thought it was funny because the mountain looked tiny bit like a miniature version of Devil's Tower from Close Encounters.
Yep.
And it was sort of tall and it was flat, and we thought, well, that's pretty weird that there's a lot of sightings around there and over the years. So we went out there one night, and I don't know, we would spend hours out there searching the skies. Back then we didn't really have the internet in '94, and certainly no service a couple of hours out in the rural area. And over the time we had things happen a lot. We were on this very long straight stretch of road, and occasionally there would be, like, I'm talking like we're straight for like 5-6 kilometers, and a light would appear in the middle of the road up on the hill, and then it would disappear. Then it would reappear, a couple of kilometers away, then it would disappear. And we always thought, was it min lights, whatever?
I was just about to say that.
And one time this light appeared and it was blue, and then it just took off skyward, straight up. So so we were pretty impressed after that. I mean, there was no hope of recording anything like that on video back then, but so that was one of the reasons why we used to go to that area. That's what drew us there. And we used to go there once during winter, once every couple of weeks. And this one particular time, we got everything set up. We're standing there, and probably around about 9 o'clock in the evening, we get the smell. The smell starts wafting through, and because there was a lot of cattle in the area, we thought, cattle and sheep. We thought, it smells like one of them's died. Maybe something's dead, because we had a breeze pick up, and this smell was just wafting through, offending every sinus you got. And what happened then is that we it got to a point we actually physically had to put like a mask across our noses.
Yeah.
And then it just sort of, after maybe 10, 15 minutes, it just stopped. And then about 10, 15 minutes after that, we heard this incredible scream come from up the hill, towards the thick forest area, not far from the mountain. And we would hear this scream, and the only way I could describe it is like it was like a man being violently crushed or squashed. It was just like this scream, this shriek or scream. And we looked at each other. We had heard about Yowies, but we were really focused on UFOs back then. And we looked at each other, and my friend's young son, who's now 40, looked at us and said, "I reckon that's a Yowie." And I said, we looked at each other and we said, "Oh, maybe. I mean, we've heard of them, but we know they're real, but we don't know if that's that." And then about another 15 minutes later, my friend's young son at the time, he was shining the halogen spotlight around, and he asked us, "What color eyes are sheep's and cows?" And we said that, well, when you shine a light on them, they're usually red. And he said, "Well, I got a pair of yellow eyes." And we got the binoculars out and we're having a look, and sure enough, we could see this pair of really large yellow eyes, probably maybe 60, 70 meters away on the hills, because the hill went up. It went up, but it sort of had rolls in it as well. Yeah. And these eyes were hiding behind the rolls. And one thing you learn about, when you're observing lights and astral phenomenon, is you learn how to judge something's distance by the size of the light. So we could figure it's about 70 meters away at a rough guess. And we're watching it, and we can see the cattle walking around, and everything seemed fairly unfazed by it. But then we're hitting it with a torch, and then it stood up. And what we saw were these pair of these greeny eyes that would change color when it moved its head, rose up, and it would have to have been 7 foot. And then they started moving towards us very quickly, and through the light, we could make out some sort of shape. And we said, "Okay, time to go. Whatever this thing is, it's coming, and it's coming now." So we just threw everything in the back seat of the car, and then, and literally, my friend little Steve and his son Stevie's screaming, "Go, go, 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 go!" And if we had the technology we've got today, like FLIRs and even infrared, we would have got some pretty amazing data on that. But what it does, we just took off and broke a $5,000 telescope in the process.
Oh,
we were just petrified. We saw this thing coming towards us, and we took off. And I said to myself after that, one day we'll get to the bottom of it, which then led to the second encounter a year later, at a place at the foothills of a place called Mount Barney, which is even further out, really remote. Great for bushwalking. It's on the backside of a national park. And we didn't know this at the time. There was tons of sightings in that area, phenomenal. And we were, again, a year later, we were out there at a friend had a job. He was the manager of the pastoral lease that existed within the national park there. And he had a house, and we had the telescope set up and everything. And we're about 2:30 in the morning, it started raining. So we all decided to call it a night. And they made me sleep in the car because I snored. So they made me sleep in the car.
So do I.
And so I'm asleep, and I suddenly start, hearing something walking around the car. I hear something growling. I look up, and I feel like I can't see anything, but I look up in the car, and I can feel that there's something sort of pushing against the car. And I thought it was my friends. I yell a few expletives and kick the doors, and thinking it's them, trying to get them to leave me alone because I was 3/4 asleep. And then I'm only giving you the quick version. And next thing I know, the car starts rocking. This thing, whatever it is pushing the car with a great deal of force. And my little, Toyota Nissan Bluebird at the time, pushing me from side to side. And you know, it threw me around where I ended up with a busted shoulder and a cut eye, and it was growling, it was roaring, and I could actually hear the pressure of it on the roof of the car, and it popped the bonnet a bit. And when we saw the result of it in daylight, it just looked like two big elbow impressions in the roof of the car. So what happened was this thing was getting quite out of control. Then I saw a light come on outside from the house, and I could hear a friend of mine yelling out, saying, "Leave him alone, leave him alone." And then they had the high-powered spotlight, and they shone it on this thing, and they said that if we had bears in Australia, they'd look like a gigantic 8-foot grizzly bear. You know,
Ooh.
that's what they sort of looked like to them. And then it stopped and it roared at them. And I could hear the roar because I was inside the car. And it roared at them. And then it just casually stepped over like a 4-foot high fence and just ran off back into the hills. But at that time, it was raining really, really heavy. And when we got dawn and daylight, we saw the damage to the car, but we could see a set of really, really big prints in the ground where it had dug in, pushing the car. So those were the two incidents. Those were the two real big incidences that I said, okay, well, you know, when my kids are older and we're a little bit more settled, we'll really dive heavily into it. And in the early 2000s, we did.
Wow. So how many actual, I don't know what the correct term for it is, but how many encounters have you had, or how many investigations have you done where you've gone out into the bush looking for the yowie?
I used to investigate other people's sightings, but I realized it was an exercise in futility. And the reason being is that oftentimes it was years later. What I learned from a couple of scientists that I used to work with is that we want to gather data, as much data as we can about the area, and we want to record that data, and we build a statistical map of activities, and we can record it by data, by time of day, date, place, location, and the type of activity, whether it's a vocalization, whether it's a sighting, whether it's footprints, whether it's tree structures, whatever it may be. And then from that, we can get a very good an accurate picture of the area, and that we can then be able to narrow investigations into those areas down. I got to particularly starting at around about, I think it was just around 2009, I found this one particular area. Well, I was recommended this one particular area by some friends, and we'd been up there before, and we had really come across some amazing stuff and had some incredible interactions with something. And so those guys got pretty busy, and I got to a point where I was going up there 3 days a week, and we took the scientific approach. We established feeding stations. We put remote cameras around everywhere. And over the course of the next following 6-7 years, recorded some incredible data and had some amazing interactions with these creatures. And then on top of that, then you have a few other weird bits and pieces, and then you would have people, and you would find the odd witness that was up there, and they would tell you their crazy story from the night before. But the idea was that led me to studies in anthropology and primatology. And basically we started treating it, and I was convinced that it was just some form of undiscovered giant ape.
The Gigantopithecus or something along those lines.
Yeah, but they're not.
No.
we know that they're not. Well, actually, if we go back up to North Queensland, that's a different story, because there's even a lot more weird stuff up there. You know, what we believe based on the work that we've done, that the Australian yowie is an undiscovered or unclassified hominid that has survived into modern age. In other words, a modern day caveman. And what we do know about what anthropology tells us, and what primatology tells us, that early humans, and particularly, obviously we had the common ancestors with the apes, but we also very much lived like apes. We spent a lot of time in trees. We spent until we became, we divided our time 50-50. And we sort of had the behavioral mechanisms of apes, and we may have lived like apes, and we may have hunted and gathered like apes. But, when it came to thinking and thought process, we were very much what we would consider modern human, in terms of survival and hunting and family units and structures and things of that nature. So I studied all this, realistically, and had some amazing interactions with these creatures. But it wasn't until I took a photo in 2012, but it wasn't until around about 2018 where, with the revelation of new software, we were able to clean it up, clean the image up, which is my tree sitter, what they call the tree sitter image. And you can hopefully come up on Google, or you can check the blog page, or you can check my Facebook page, which is the Australian Yowie Project. And you can see the reports in there that I wrote about the tree sitter. And that has come back to tell us the image of it is very much hominid face and hominid body, but the way they operate is very, very human. We also then had, through a good friend of mine, a retired scientist in Canberra called Harry Jenkins, which is not his real name, but he likes to keep his real name out of it. He does a lot of our forensic hair analysis, and he has a lot of contacts with high-level forensic people at different universities around Australia. And we were able to compare not only the hair samples that I've recovered before from footprints casts, but the hair samples of other sightings in Australia and in America. And we found that the forensic feedback is that, it's a form of human, but not modern human. But from the examination of the hair and the hair structures and the scales and the internal things of the hair. So we know now, without a shadow of a doubt, that it's basically the Yowie is a living caveman, and we think that because we've got comparable hair samples from the US, we know that the Yowie would be in the same. The Sasquatch would be in the same boat. We know that the Almasti would probably be in the same boat. Not sure about the Yeren from China or the rock ape from Vietnam. We're not sure about the orang pendek from Indonesia either. But what we have done is compared human, ape, unknown sample from two unknown samples from Australia and one from America, and they're all the same. Oh, with the exception of the modern human, that's different, but very, very close.
Wow. That puts a completely different light on it, that.
Yeah, I have never heard of that. Anybody mentioning anything, comparing cavemen to Bigfoot.
So basically, that's what we believe it is.
Wow.
And that also tells us, and if we're right, if we're correct, then that tells us that a lot of our studies of cavemen that universities have done over the years is pretty wrong.
Wow. I mean,
and the thought that something from 300, 400,000 years ago is still alive in the modern age, and in countries like Russia, particularly with Siberia or that remote area of China or Australia, they're the countries that it's going to have a chance to have survived.
Yeah, because they're so remote.
Exactly. So we have the space.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna rewind a little bit, all the way back to
Sure.
when you heard what sounded like a man, screaming.
Yeah.
Is that a normal sound of a Yowie?
From what I've heard what we call it, that's now referred to by a lot of people as like the shriek.
The shriek.
The shriek. So like you hear something shrieking in the bush. That's a very similar sound. And when we've heard them, I've heard that one time in the male voice, which is what we heard. It sounded like a deeper male voice. We've also heard it in like a higher pitch, what would you describe as a female voice. And I've also heard it once in what you would think of as almost like an adolescent or a childlike voice being called out as well. But then we've also heard versions of the long calls, which is what, if you look at, let's say we talk about our friend Bobo from Finding Bigfoot, and he does that big sort of the long calls. And we've spent countless nights in there having contacts with these creatures and experimenting on what sort of calls, and it's taken a very, very long time. But and I can't talk about Sasquatch because can't add to that. But the Yowie groups that we've studied and worked with, that we come to believe things like, for example, like a long call would be like a warning call, that someone's here, get out of the ground, humans are here, noisy humans are here, we've got to go deeper in, let's get rid of these guys. Then we think that the shriek could be more of a like, hey, I'm here, don't come any closer kind of call. And then we have what we call the soothing call. And I've had great success with what I call the soothing call, which is, this is going to sound a bit funny, but I basically try to make myself sound like a female, and I do a long wooing sort of call. And I've had very strong success with that, more so than any of the other calls.
So you're actually getting replies to that?
Oh, lots of replies, yeah. I mean, basically our attitude is that, if you think about it, you're sitting in the lounge room of your house and someone comes to your fence and they're yelling, hey, screw you, hey, you're gonna come and see who it is, and then you're not gonna want to get into it, so you're gonna go back to your couch. But if you have the sound of a beautiful woman calling from your gate saying, hey, come out and see me, hi, you're going to go out and have a look, and you're going to probably, and if she's really attractive, you're probably going to check her out for longer, right?
I'm married. Nope.
Well,
that just brings, I have like so many questions right now.
It's the same kind of approach that we took, that we thought if we can make ourselves, if we could hide ourselves for a start, where they're just looking around, looking. But we also got the idea too from National Geographic, and particularly the studies of a lot of gorillas, and how the females call to the males, and how they just quickly will come running, particularly if it's that time.
The mating season.
Yeah, well, they're gonna get down, and I'm trying to find a polite way of saying it, because that's not how we would talk on a podcast. But yeah, we've also done experiments with let's just say an item that contains a lot of female pheromones, and we've conducted experiments with that where we've also had a degree of success with it as well. So what we try to do is we try to draw. We've been, over the past, try to draw them in, try to let them see that we're not a threat, trying to get them to associate us with good stuff. So that's why we fed them, and we didn't feed them like stuff that would make a big difference. It's more like treat stuff. So we would throw them mangoes, and we would throw them sweet corn. They're the two things they seem to really, really love up here. And we can only assume that's because it contains high levels. When they're just past ripe, you get high levels of fructose, which is something they don't normally get a lot of in their diet. Just like you see birds and monkeys eating fruit in Africa, and they get drunk. And we don't think they necessarily get drunk, but they certainly enjoy the sugary taste. But anyway, I digress.
No, what I found interesting about that is when you talked about the different calls and everything, the fact that you said that long one is kind of a warning, that actually tells you quite a bit about their social structure, because one, it shows they have a social structure. Two, they have a high level of intelligence because they're actually warning, and it tells you that there's more than one of them there because they're actually warning somebody or something. You know what I mean? So it's
Correct.
very interesting.
If you look at the structure of some gorilla families, you usually have the family unit at a certain location, and then usually the younger sort of males that are getting closer to branching off, what they tend to do is they tend to start like move their own nests slightly further and further and further away from the family unit, and eventually they break off. But until that point of time, they tend to act as sentries and watch out for the families and do the calls so they can assist their fathers and the harem leaders. And I've seen lots of documentaries about that, and I think it could be very similar, which is as I said, which was very confusing at first because it gave a lot of indication that these things live and behave and eat exactly the way gorillas do. But then there's the other side of the coin where they act very different.
Mm.
So we think that, that's possibly the case. But you're right, it does show a lot. And how we got that information, how we were able to discern it, is working with other independent researchers, and we share all the information, and we can get their account of what they heard when they heard it, and then that will sort of give us an indication of their behaviour at the time which they're making those noises, so we can try to surmise more about them, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I actually, well, for years I've been looking, obviously, the Bigfoot Field Researcher website and the Australian Yowie research page, Australian Yowie Hunters or whatever it's called, and they have a section in there on different sightings, and they're categorized state by state and then sort of town by town. And there was a few up in North Queensland. I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but is it Ormeau or something along those lines, this particular area?
Ormeau.
Yeah. And they have reports of a fairly aggressive creature out there, but there are many others where they don't have that sort of aggression. Do you find in your research that you've come across all different types of behavior from them?
Yes, most definitely. For a start, that place at Ormeau is undergoing heavy development. When that happened, which was a long time ago, a lot of that place is, I don't know exactly where it was, but mostly a lot of Ormeau now is all suburbs. It's terrible to see, watching. I mean, I know we've got to have development and we've got to have expansion, but it's terrible to see areas where sightings have occurred historically and just being bulldozed. But yes, I mean, I go back to the parallels they have with gorillas, whereas and particularly chimpanzees, where the females tend to be less confrontational and the males tend to be more territorial. And I found exactly the same with these guys. With the exception, though, also geographical location changes it. A lot of in southeast Queensland, a lot of the Yowie sightings and where they've been seen have been in areas where where it's a high level of camping and fishing, right? Where there's a lot of day tourists, a lot of four-wheel driving, but yet there's areas where it's still remote enough for these creatures to exist, and they scavenge also off the campers. I've come across in the middle of the bush, in the middle of nowhere, big garbage bags full of stuff that's just been strewn out, and looking for food, and we're talking 1 or 2 kilometers from the campground, right? And so we find the ones in high use public areas to be a lot more lot more relaxed. They tend to be like, oh yeah, there goes another human, so I'm staying here, I'm not getting out of the tree, I'm just just another person. But then we found the ones in the remote areas where they don't have a lot of contact with people as being far more aggressive, far more forthright. But then we also changes it. Both areas change at nighttime. So at nighttime they change personality again. It's like they become emboldened. They know that they can see through at night, and they know we can't. They know they own the night, and that gives them an advantage. And I think that's an adaptation that they've gotten over thousands of years, where they're back in those primordial times when there was nothing but conflict and a battle to survive. I think it's an adaptation that they've made, but they can definitely see, because they've got much bigger eyes, they can allow more light in. They've probably got more rods where they can allow the light in and see more. They definitely have the advantage over us, and they become more emboldened. That's when they start coming close to campsites and houses. That's when they start going through bins, and they just even stand next to people, and people don't even realize it. There was an example one time. We were at this location. I was with my son, who was 17 at the time, and two other friends. And one friend had a bionic ear on. Another one had a fleur searching the river. I was standing behind one of my friends, and my son was standing behind me. And my son is 6'7".
Oh,
Okay, I'm 6'4". He's and yeah, my son's 6'7". And it's so dark there, you cannot see in front. You couldn't even see your hand. That's how dark it is. And he said, and I hear him saying, "Stop it, stop it." And I say to him, "What's wrong?" He goes, "Will you stop it?" And I said, "Stop doing what?" And he goes, "You're breathing and wheezing down my neck." And I said, "Mate, I'm in front of you."
ooh. I just got goosebumps then.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
He just stepped forward right towards me, grabbed my arm, said, "Okay, let's go." I said, "No,
Yeah.
we're good." Then we heard something. Then as he stepped forward, we heard something run off from behind him. So something had snuck up on him.
So they could actually get in that close without you even knowing
Yes,
it.
they do. Absolutely, especially at night.
Which raises, like, yeah, I mean, aside, I mean, I have so many questions right now. So, okay, I'm gonna start with this one. So, what is your theory as to why Bigfoots, Sasquatch, Yowies, all of these species, why is it that there's still, like, it's still a question whether or not they exist? Because I've
Yes.
heard theories about how I've heard crazy theories as far as how they could possibly even turn invisible and move around, or even like jump through certain, let's call it portals, so they don't get caught. Like, what's your theory as to why they're not, I don't know, like, Bigfoot exists?
Okay, let me ask you a question.
Yes.
If you were walking down the 7-Eleven and you saw the 7-Eleven get robbed and you saw the guys run out, but you turned your head real quickly to see if there's any cops, and you turned your head back and then the guys had just vanished. Somewhere. They just vanished. And if the cop said to you, "Hey, Fernando, where'd the guys go?" And you say, "I don't know, they just disappeared." People are very quick to label that moment paranormal. I mean, like, you can't say to the cops, "The guy just disappeared, it's paranormal." I don't know. Gone into a portal, just vanished.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? So but in saying that, I am of the flesh and blood world, right? I believe, I mean, we've got their genetics. I've gotten samples of their genetics. A paranormal being that can disappear through portals is not going to leave footprints. It's not going to leave hair samples. I've got a couple of pictures of them holding food. They're not going to leave dental marks for me to make casts out of, like I've done. They're not going to leave handprints on my cars where I've lifted their prints as well. True paranormal creatures are not going to do that, right? But I will say this, what we have discovered is that, whilst my view and fairly unshakable view is that these things are flesh and bloods, that there is something else out there that is not them, that may give people the impression that it is. And I think that the Yowies know about whatever this other thing is, that there is definitely something else out there. There is definitely, what it is, I don't know. Is it spiritual? Is it paranormal? Is it extraterrestrial? I don't know. But there is something else out there with them.
That's a scary thought to think about.
I don't know.
And going into what you
I
just
think-
said, and it sort of ties into what Fernando was saying as well. I've heard that a lot of these creatures, and it could be talking about this other one that you're referring to now, have an almost movie-like ability to self-camouflage, almost like the Predator in the Predator movies, and they can just blend into their surroundings and can be almost invisible, and that could be why they can sometimes sneak up on you. And it may not be the Bigfoot you're talking about or the Yowie you're talking about. It could be this other thing that you're referring to now.
Well, this is what I'm saying. The Yowie is not all that's out there.
Yeah.
and we've had encounters with something, and I can't even begin to tell you what it was. I got no idea. It was like even just a fleeting glance. Like, well, one time we were walking through the bush, and a friend of mine was just standing there, and something knocked him down. Something knocked him 3-4 foot off the trail, but none of us saw anything. But he said he felt like he got hit, like shoulder charge in the chest.
Wow.
And he fell a couple of feet. But and a lot of Australian Indigenous stories that they tell in their, not only associated with what they call the dream time, but just also in their folklore and their culture, talk about a creature out there called like a trickster.
Yep.
And because there's so many different Indigenous groups, they all have different stories to different relationships with the Yowies and different relationships with this, whatever it is. But what I do know is that the reports of this sort of entity, this trickster, goes back thousands of years. So whatever it is, I got no idea, but it is definitely out there. It's out there with the Yowies. I think whatever it is can manifest itself to look like a Yowie or to look whatever you like, whoever you want.
You know what?
And all I know is that we have a very large number. We're getting onto sort of like Pleiades things, but we have a very large number of people that go missing in our national forests every year. Some return, some are found deceased, and then there's a big chunk that's nothing. No answers at all. And that is the real mystery with all this. I mean, we're out there trying to do proper scientific work, and it's almost like this thing gets in the way, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. What you're saying to me sounds very similar to in America. You have the Bigfoot sightings, but you also have skinwalker type sightings. And the skinwalker is a little bit more mythological, I suppose. It's tied into Native American law.
Yeah, has its roots with American Indian law as well. But yeah, no, I've read heavily into old Skinwalker Ranch, and look, we're getting into a world of what we call esoterical science, or some would say esoterical pseudoscience. But look, I have no answers for what this other thing is. I got no clue, no ideas. We've had cameras tripped, turned off, all that sort of skinwalker type stuff has happened from time to time.
Yeah.
And it seems to be the closer we get to actual Yowies, the closer it actually gets to you get to the Yowies, the more these other things pick up. At least that's how it seemed to me and a few of the people we work with. And of course, a few of us we talk about this thing called the Yowie curse as well, which is a couple of us researchers, probably a group of 10, we talk about it because we've noticed it. And it also seems that some researchers, the closer you get to really understanding what these Yowies are, the closer their life starts to fall apart. When I was getting really, really, really close, the GFC hit. I lost my business. I lost a lot of money. Beginning at the end of my marriage. Started with some off and on health battles. I know other guys that were getting, different parts of the country were getting close, and they would have mental breakdowns. They'd become so obsessed that they end up having mental breakdowns, losing their house and their marriage. I know a couple of others have one has lost family members or a string of family members. So it's, or then another guy would just suddenly have a whole string of bad health. Now, some may say coincidences, but if you know anything about, or if you have any own feelings about the universe, you generally know there's not a lot of coincidence.
No. Okay, I've got a question.
Be demonic. I mean, it could even be demonic, this force. But that's what I believe.
That opens up so many questions and we haven't got time to go into all of them today.
Well, even if you talk to Catholic priests, exorcists in the Catholic Church, they will say that one sure shot sign of demonic interference is when a lot of bad crap happens together at a short space of time.
Yeah.
Like one thing,
that is so
one thing here and there, but a lot together in a cluster, which is what I'm thinking. But I have no proof of that. It's just supposition.
Yeah. All right. I've got a question for you. If somebody is wanting to start their little career in Yowie research, what would be your best advice on what gear to get as a starter kit? And how far out would you say they would need to go into the bush, and what sort of signs would they need to look for to know they're in the right kind of habitat and area to find something?
Okay. First of all, before they start anything, they've got to understand what their goals are. What's the goal? Are they want to be actively in the bush looking for these creatures? Are they wanting to set up remote viewing posts that's going to record data they review later? Are they wanting to have live interactions? And they wanting to set up feeding stations and trying to set up contact experiments? So you've got to understand what your goals are first. Like, I know guys that will not go out there. They will just go put all their live cameras out, their custom-made cameras. They'll put out feeding stations, and they'll go back, grab the data, and review it. Other people like me that like to go out live, and of course, there's a way and a methodology in which you do it. But realistically, are you going to go at daytime, or are you going to go right in the middle of the night? That's the other question too. That affects your gear choice.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going during the day, then a really high quality digital camera with a telephoto lens, minimum sort of 13.8 megapixel sensor minimum, but the quality is in the lens.
Yeah.
If you can get at least a minimum 15 megapixel camera, and I suggest the point and shoot model, because unless you're a professional photographer, and you can look through some of my photos, you can see the mistakes that you make on focusing, especially now that I wear these full time. And it helps guide you. And then you can always review and edit photos later on to get clearer pictures. If you're going at night, again, what's your goal? What are you hoping to achieve? Because they don't like, the Yowies, we know for a fact, do not like loud noises. They do not like bright lights because it wrecks their night vision. So that leaves infrared, which they can see infrared, because they can see we're positive they can see in the higher spectrums. Tests and examples done by trail camera companies have shown that creatures like possums and other dogs they can see infrared, and they will alter their trail around to avoid it. So first of all, but you have to be very clear what your goals and objectives are. That will determine what time of day or night you go, and that will determine what gear you buy. So, and as I said, if you're going daytime, and if you're going nighttime, well, if you've got around about $5,500, buy yourself a FLIR, one that can record video. Audio recorders, definitely. If you're going with multiple groups, and also particularly the biggest key that you can have is stealth and be quiet, because they do not like noise. Most people, when they walk through the bush or a forest, they sound like if you sit quietly in the bush for an hour, if you just sit quietly where there's no one around, you will, and when someone who's not used to walking in the bush walks through the bush, they sound like a freight train.
Yeah.
They really do sound like a freight train coming down the line. The trick is being able to learn how to stealthily move through the bush. There's a biologist we have in northern New South Wales that I've worked with many times, an older gentleman called Gary Obert. Now, Gary's a retired biologist, but his nickname is, we call him the Bush Ninja. And it's because 1 minute you can be talking to him, he'll be right next to you, and you can look away, and then you'll come back and he's vanished. He's literally vanished, and he's walked off so quietly, and he's probably 10 meters away, and you don't even know it. Learning stealth, understanding camouflage, particularly. Again, your goals dictates what gear you buy. That's probably the only way I can really answer it.
No, it's good. I was just thinking along the lines of, I know at some point we want to go out and do some Yowie research here in WA, but I wouldn't know the first thing other than watch a couple of the TV shows, and they're all geared up towards the American Bigfoot sort of investigation. And I thought it was an interesting question to ask. Yeah.
Over in WA, well, that's another set kettle of fish too, because there's more than one type of Yowie, and there's more than one type of creature, and we can't even classify what the others are. Like in Western Australia, there's reports of ones that are 3 and 4 foot tall. There's even some limited. There is a photo getting around, but only researchers have seen, that hasn't been made public, of a small creature about 2 foot tall carting off a dead wallaby from a trail camera. There's reports up in North. Pardon?
No, I'm just interested.
I'm just amazed. I was like, what? A 2 foot creature carrying? Wow.
Carrying a dead wallaby, or just dragging it off.
And they actually have a photo of this.
It's a series of still photos, but but I don't know if I'm supposed to say that, but apparently it's an old photo. I don't know who took the photo. I only saw quite a number of years ago. I only saw a picture of it. I think it was from WA or Northern Territory, but I know in Northern Territory from elders that I've spoken to up there over the years that we have these same little people up there as well as the big people. And that's how a lot of Indigenous people refer to them, as small people, big people, or the hairy man, or the traditional names of Yowie, Durugor, Winkin, many other names. But then we got the ones up North Queensland that look like all of those, and then I've got really credible witness reports of something that looked like an orange, like an orangutan, walking on its hind legs like a man climbing trees.
Wow.
And these creatures do spend a lot of time in trees.
Yeah. That's interesting. It's interesting.
So aside from your experience when you was in the car and the Yowie was how close, aside from that experience, how close did you get to, almost, I guess you could say, face to face, or to
aside from that, closest I got in daytime was around about 5 meters. And that was because we turned up to the site, and we were preparing the sweet corn and mangoes for the feeding station. It was restock day, and these creatures, like a lot of other, like gorillas, like chimpanzees, like orangutans, they become creatures of habit, and they like to, they get used to routine, and you can install a routine, like particularly if they know this yummy stuff is going to appear on a certain day of the week. Now they probably don't think, oh well, it's Tuesday at 2 o'clock, it's running a bit late. No, they have some other mechanism, some other natural mechanism that they can sense things. It's like when you go out and you leave your dog at home and you come back and he's waiting at the gate. Somehow he knew you'd be there.
Yeah.
That's the only kind of thing I can equate it to. But yeah, we were cutting up some food, and we heard some heavy movement at a tree line, which was about 4 or 5 meters away. And actually, it wasn't threatening. It was noises of excitement. It was actually like it was very monkey, chimp like sound, like, and we actually heard like that as well. And they have banged chest as well, and because it sounded like if you hit, those plastic garbage bins that you've got, the big ones for outside, your big rollout bins. It was like banging on the lid of that, like it was excitement.
Wow.
And we got a corner of the cob and threw it over there, and saw this big black hand reach out and just pick it up and duck back in.
Wow.
We put a lot of this stuff on our websites. A lot of people, we've put a lot of this stuff out there. I'm not in the storytelling business. I'm in the, in scientific investigation business. So
that's what we
a lot of people, a lot of people ring me up saying they want to hear stories, or they email me, "What's some stories you got?" I'm not, when it comes to Yowies, I'm not in the storytelling business. That's something else.
Well, I've got something else as well. I do believe you've written a book or two. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that and where people can find it?
Well, during the last 4 years, I've had a lot of medical challenges, which has limited my time in the bush. And so I decided to do a work of fiction called Jesus Can't Drive, where it's a supernatural thriller where a doctor who loses his wife to breast cancer decides to take her ashes on a trip across the outback, and along the way meets a fellow who claims to be Jesus Christ, and of course the doctor doesn't believe him, thinks he's nuts. He abducts the doctor, and then he abducts the doctor, and they end up on this adventure across the desert of helping people, where they encounter a couple of angels and the devil. But when I wrote that, I make quite an interesting reference, when we talk about the things that we've talked about, things that we're out in the bush that we don't know about.
Yeah.
And I drew on a lot of information that I gathered over the years to create those scenes. So I wrote that, created my own publishing business called Panda Press. And so I published Jesus Can't Drive last November, which is available on Amazon. But now also later this year, we're going to be publishing a couple of Yowie books with other researchers who are putting together, particularly a series of books that we're working on putting together about other people's Yowies encounters. So this is particularly where we'll get into the storytelling business of people's real life encounters from North Queensland.
Ooh.
And some of them are, remarkable.
It sounds exciting.
We have to accept the witness word, because in the old days of journalism, before TV, before radio, we only had the written word, and a witness's word was enough to convict somebody. It still is. It's still enough word to put someone in jail for the rest of their life. So we can't dismiss those accounts, and the writer of the book, Lionel Carroll, who runs a couple of North Queensland Yowie groups on Facebook, is putting together this book, these series of books, which will be fantastic, and hopefully be out towards the end of the year.
Oh, that sounds so exciting. We're just about out of time, but I would love to, when these books come out, have you back on, and maybe with your co-writers and things like that, and do a full sort of roundtable chat about some of the stories in these books, and hopefully get a bigger understanding of what's actually happening out there and what people are experiencing.
Absolutely, because some of the stories that Lionel, the author, has shared with me, because I'm doing the editing and the publishing on it, and the typesetting and the cover design, is that some of these stories that Lionel will share on behalf of his followers are stuff of what nightmares are made of.
Oh, I'm getting goosey bumps thinking about it. In fact, when it does come out, you'll have to let me know, because I would like to arrange to get like an autographed copy, and where we can buy it, and then see if we can get it sort of signed off as well, because that's the kind of stuff I love to read.
Up in North Queensland, so we might have to send him a bunch to get him to sign and send them back, and then send them out. So, but
Nice.
once we get a bit closer to the mark, we'll certainly let everybody know, and certainly make your podcast the first port of call for Lionel to talk about the book.
It sounds awesome.
The information that's in it is really going to, if you're into these sort of stories and into this sort of data, this is something that people like even the best horror writers couldn't come up with, because it's true. That's the worst thing.
And that's where it gets you a lot of the time, because truth is always stranger than fiction, and because it is true, it's that much more scary as well.
That's for sure. Well, I just want to throw it out there. I found your book on Goodreads.com, Amazon, and also Barnes and Nobles. Jesus Can't Drive.
It's not on Barnes and Nobles anymore, but yes.
Oh, okay. I mean, I just Googled it, popped up in these three places. But Goodreads.com has it 5 out of 5, and the ratings 5 out of 5, Amazon has it 5 out of 5, so people are actually liking this book. So yeah, I'm actually
Well, I
gonna.
appreciate that, Fernando. Thank you. It's been a lot of hard work, and as I said, we're just starting with our publishing story. I'm getting a bit old to be walking through the bush so much these days, so I'm going to try and help bring other people's stories to light, with through publishing, and we're going to do that with Lionel's book at the end of the year. And as I said, I'm excited. I can't wait because it's like you say, truth is stranger than fiction.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Before we go, do you want to just let everybody know where they can find you or your book? Well, obviously we just talked about the book, but where we can find you, your websites and things like that on socials.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of, when I get time, in the process of building a new website, but you can find my research work on Facebook at the Australian Yowie Project. And on Facebook, you can find a lot of the things that I've shared, a lot of the research work, particularly a photo that came from another independent researcher that we worked with a recent photo that he took a couple of months back, which is probably the most incredible, stunning photo of a yowie that you'll ever see in your life. That's certainly one of the best taken to date. He's been getting inundated by a lot of US media outlets as well, and other more higher known researchers in the United States, because the photo from New South Wales is quite stunning. But you can read about that and other bits and pieces that we've done there. Or you can read some of my pretty crappy articles at my blog page, which is the Australian8project.blogspot. The only reason is because, hey, when I started that blog page, all my work is there. But when you're raising a family of 4 kids at the time, they're all grown now, but you have very limited time, so you don't spell check as much as you want. But the information is there, and it's fascinating and it's interesting, and a lot of the things that we have spoken about is on the blog site, which is Australian8project.blogspot.com.
Awesome. I think on that, it's time for us to go. And like I said, we invite you back anytime you want to come out. Anytime you've got anything new you want to put out there, we'll have you on. So,
well, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Yes, because definitely I am very curious to hear your female Yowie call.
On the spot.
Why do I suddenly feel like a drag queen?
Oh my god.
I think on that we will head off now, so we can save you having to put it out there and do a big yelp. So
next time, Fernando, I'll do it for you.
Oh, you've said it now. It's recorded, man. All right, take it easy, guys. Thank you very much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it, and love your work, mate.
Thank you very much.
Take it easy.